Get ready.
Champions of the world!
The World Cup soccer is one of the biggest events in the world. They're expecting up to 6 million people visiting the cities, and obviously those people will need a place to stay. You can probably make the same amount of money as you might be making in a full year if you put in the right strategy. So I think this is one of the biggest opportunities, of the decade, probably, for your short-term rental units if you're in any of these cities.
Welcome to Get Paid for Your Pad, the definitive show on Airbnb hosting, featuring the best advice on how to maximize profits from your Airbnb listing, as well as real-life experiences from Airbnb hosts all over the world. Welcome.
Get paid for your pad. Get paid for your pad. Get paid for your pad.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to an episode of Get Paid for Your Pad. This is an episode of Rev-Up, where we talk about revenue management and give you insights into our strategies and how we're maximizing revenue for over 2,000 listings all across the world. Today, we are going to talk about probably a very surprising topic, but we are going to talk about soccer. Yes, you heard it correct. We are going to talk about soccer. And you might wonder, why are we going to talk about soccer? This is not a sports podcast, but the World Cup soccer is taking place in the United States, Mexico, and Canada in June and July 2026. And this is one of the biggest events in the world. They're expecting up to 6 million people visiting the cities where the games are going to be held. And obviously, those people will need a place to stay. And so if you are in one of the cities where the World Cup will be taking place, you better raise your prices now, because soon enough, people are going to be booking and you're going to be able to get a much, much higher ADR than you usually get. And so in this podcast, I'm going to give you the most important information. We'll probably do a lot of podcasts on this topic because it's such a huge opportunity to maximize revenue. I mean, you could probably be making the amount of money in June and July itself. Like, you could probably make the same amount of money as you might be making in a full year if you put in the right strategy. So, all right, let's dive into it. First of all, I'm going to give you some resources. I think it's a good idea, if you are in one of the cities where the games are going to be held, to really educate yourself a little bit on what this tournament is about, who's coming, who's participating, what games are important, where are the games held, of course, what stadium, but then also the fan zones. There are going to be several fan zones probably throughout the cities where people are going to be congregating to watch the games. They'll have like huge screens and parties and whatnot. So there's just going to be a huge draw to these cities where the games are going to be held, outside of even people who have no tickets, just like how people go, what's it called, tailgating for like football games and stuff like that. People are going to be coming to the States, even if they don't have a ticket. They're just going to want to be part of the vibe, the atmosphere. And like I mentioned, there's going to be millions and millions of people coming to the States for these events. And they're also probably going to be traveling in areas near the cities where the games are. A lot of people are going to take the opportunity to, see more places in the US than just the city where the game that they want to watch is being held, right? So if I'm going to be traveling to Los Angeles to see my team play, then I'm probably also going to see the Grand Canyon, because I mean, how many times do people travel to the States? If you're traveling there anyway, you might as well take the opportunity, turn it into a holiday. A lot of people are going to be traveling from far, right? The most popular areas in the world when it comes to soccer are South America and Europe. And so a lot of people will travel pretty far. And so they're going to want to maximize their time and take advantage of the opportunity to probably do some sightseeing and go to some interesting areas. All right, so let's dive into it. First of all, if you want to know when the games are being held, you want to go to FIFA.com. So that's FIFA.com. That's the website of the organization that organizes the World Cup. And that's where you can find all the information that you need. As I mentioned, the games will be held from June 11th of 2026 until July 19th. So July 19th, that's a Sunday, that's the final will be held on that day. Now, the cities where the games are going to be held are Vancouver in Canada, Seattle, the San Francisco Bay Area, Los Angeles, then a few cities in Mexico. It's Guadalajara, Mexico City, Monterrey. And then in the south, it's Kansas, Dallas, and Houston. And then it's Atlanta, Miami, Toronto, Boston, Philadelphia, and New York, New Jersey. Now, I don't know exactly where in the cities the stadiums are. That's something that you definitely want to know if you have units in that area. So I'm sure you can find that out. Use ChatGPT or Google or just look at this website. So these are the cities where the games are going to be held. A little bit about the structure of the World Cup is also useful to know. First, in the first couple of weeks, every team that qualifies is going to be in a group of 4 teams, and they're going to be playing 3 matches. At the end of the group stage, the teams that are placed first, second in the group are going to go to the knockout rounds. Okay, that's 24 teams, right? That's 12 groups of 4 countries, 4 teams per group, 48 countries in total. It's the biggest event in the history of the World Cup. That's 24 teams. Then the 8 best placed number 3 in the group are also going to go through to the knockout stages. So in the knockout stages, it's no longer group matches where you calculate points. It's just 2 teams play each other and the winner advances to the next round. So the first knockout round is, or I think in the US it's more called like a playoff round, maybe. We call it knockout rounds. The round of 32 teams. The winners of those 16 matches will then advance to the round of 16. It'll be 8 games, and then the quarterfinals will be 4 games, the semifinals 2 games, final, of course, 1 game. And then there's also a game that will be played by the number 3 and the number 4 to determine who's going to be the number 3 of the tournament. So that's the structure of the tournament. And this is really important to know because depending on like what country plays in your city, that's really going to determine how many people are going to be traveling to your city, right? If big soccer countries like England, Germany, France, Italy, Spain, Argentina, Brazil, these are like the countries that have the best chance of winning the tournament. And these are also the countries that are going to, attract the biggest crowds, right? Because even the people that are not from those countries, they want to see those bigger teams play. So if your city is hosting Argentina against Brazil, get ready because it's going to be crazy, right? And there's going to be an insane amount of people traveling to your city. If your city is hosting a game of, let's say, New Zealand versus Cape Verde, believe it or not, Cape Verde qualified already, and New Zealand did too. Probably not as many people are going to be attending that game, or not. It's not going to attract the same type of crowd. So you really want to pay attention to who is playing in your city. Now, that's not known yet, and this is really important information. As of right now, for the group stage games, only the 3 hosting countries already know where their games are being played. So, for example, I'm going to check out the schedule right here. For example, the US is going to be playing on Friday, June 12th in Los Angeles. We don't know who they will be playing against. They're also going to be playing on Friday the 19th in Seattle, and they're going to be playing the 25th of June in Los Angeles again. We don't know the opponents yet. Canada is going to be playing in Vancouver on the 18th. They're going to be playing in Toronto on the 12th, and they're going to be playing on the 24th again in Vancouver. And then Mexico is going to be playing on the 11th, the opening game, I guess, in Mexico City. Then they'll play on the 18th in Guadalajara, and then Wednesday 24th they play in Mexico City again. These are the only games where we know one of the teams that will be playing. All the other teams don't know yet, even the ones that have qualified already for the World Cup, they don't know yet where they're going to be playing. Because first of all, we don't know what countries are going to be qualified. The qualification games are still going. And so not all the countries have qualified yet, right? So there's going to be games still in the qualification phase.
What's up, guys? Eric here. And before we dive into this episode, I want to introduce you to our podcast sponsor, Free Wild Foundry. Free Wild Foundry is a revenue management service, white glove, high touch service for the top 1% short-term rental operators. We're currently managing over $60 million in bookings, 1,700 listings worldwide, and we are growing very, very quickly. Our RPM program is a done-for-you revenue management service, and I want to invite you, if you are a short-term rental operator that's doing $1 million or more, or maybe about 15 listings or more, head over to freewildfoundry.com and apply for one of our free revenue audit reports. This is where Jasper and the team will actually take a look at your pricing strategy, audit all of your Airbnb listings, and let you know if you're leaving money on the table. So this is free to everyone who's listening to this podcast. Head over to freewildfoundry.com and apply for your free audit report.
Now, next month, December 5th, mark your calendar. that's when the draw will take place. That's when we will know what teams are going to be playing who and where. The moment that that's known, I think a lot of people are going to be booking their flights, and they're going to be booking accommodation. Most importantly, accommodation, right? So there's going to be a massive amount of bookings happening right after the draw because people know that it's going to be expensive, right? It's going to be expensive to find accommodation in these cities. And so people know that. So they're going to be booking right away, right after the draw is known. When they know where their team is going to play, they're going to go on booking.com, they're going to go on Airbnb, and they're going to be searching for deals because everybody knows that there's always some people that, price manually and they don't adjust their prices. Who knows? Maybe there's probably some hosts out there that they don't even know that the World Cup is even happening. I know soccer is not the most popular sport in the US. So there's probably some hosts that don't even know about the World Cup to start with, right? So those properties are probably going to be underpriced. But then soon enough, those are going to be booked, and then people are going to be paying very high prices for accommodation, especially if it's near the stadium, especially if it's downtown. Because even if the stadium is not in the downtown area, a lot of people will want to stay in the downtown area because that's where the parties are going to be. People want to go to the bars, the restaurants, because a lot of people that are coming, they don't have a ticket. There's far more people coming to the States to be part of the World Cup and to be part of the atmosphere and the vibe than, the amount of tickets that are available, right? So probably the majority of people don't even have a ticket. They might just go to the fan zones. They might just go to the bars. They just want to be part of the experience, right? So the downtown areas for sure are going to be very popular. The areas where the stadiums are going to be popular as well because people, will want to be close to the stadium. And then there's going to be fan zones. A fan zone is essentially an area designated area by the city where they'll put up like big screens. They'll put up, there's going to be, you can buy drinks and food. And that's where people are going to be partying. And they're going to be watching the games as well. And sometimes those fan zones attract like huge crowds. So it's not just the stadium in the downtown area. You definitely want to also know where the fan zone is going to be. I don't know if that's already information that's publicly available, but maybe it is. So definitely, go on ChatGPT, go on Google and try and figure out where those fan zones are going to be because those areas are going to be also very popular. The other thing that I want to talk about on this podcast is, of course, once you know what games are being played after December 5th, when the draw is, how do you now decide what price, how to, manage your pricing, right? Obviously, we're going to be pricing higher, but how much higher? That's going to be an interesting game because this type of event only happens once every 4 years. So there's not a whole lot of data available, right? The last time it was in the US was in 1994. So that's 31 years ago, right? 3 years ago it was in Qatar. Before that, I think maybe it was in Russia, may have been in Germany. I can't remember. I just know in 2014 it was in Brazil. In 2010 it was in South Africa. So there's data, but because it's only once every 4 years and it's in different places, it's kind of hard to predict how much money people are willing to pay for accommodation during those times. But it's going to be a lot. This for a lot of people that travel to the World Cup, this is maybe once in a lifetime thing that they do. And so they're willing to spend a lot of money on that experience. So I think the biggest piece of advice that I can give you is number one is if you haven't yet, make sure you raise your prices now. Okay. Because once December 5th comes, people are going to be booking. The booking window is going to be very different than from anything you've seen, so far probably. So if you are in one of these cities, again, I'll say them: Vancouver, Seattle, San Francisco, Los Angeles, Houston, Dallas, Kansas City, Atlanta, Miami, Toronto, Boston, Philadelphia, and then New York, New Jersey. In those cities, make sure if you have units there, you got to put the prices high, maybe 2 times, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, 10 times. I don't know how it's going to go, but it's better to price the units high now because the biggest risk is getting booked at a rate that's too low. All right. So that's what we're trying to prevent. Now, once you know what games are going to be held, so after December 5th, I really recommend spend an hour a day or something looking at prices, looking at what people are paying, what other units are getting booked at to get a feel for, how much people are willing to pay. I would say there's no rush to get booked immediately because I think inventory might sell out completely on the days that the games are held. Inventory will probably sell out completely. So even last minute, you could still get a really high price. Maybe you could even play last man standing. It's a risky one. It's not my favorite strategy. in general, unless I know for a fact that the market's going to book up completely. But obviously that's hard to predict. But what we do know is that prices are going to be very elevated. So it's better to start a little higher than start a little lower. Because if you start really high and don't get booked immediately, you still have like 6-7 months, to get booked. But if you get booked at a low price, now you've lost the opportunity, right? So definitely bias towards a higher rate. And also, if you're in an area that's close to one of these cities, there's probably going to be elevated travel in the entire region. So for example, Los Angeles, right? People that are going to be traveling to Los Angeles are probably going to be taking advantage, and they will probably also visit maybe the Grand Canyon, maybe Big Bear, right? They might visit Vegas even. A lot of people that will be traveling to the States it might be their first time that they ever travel to the States. So they might want to go to, I don't know, Yellowstone, like all the usual suspects, like the big tourist destinations. I think there's going to be a lot of overflow from people visiting for the World Cup that are also going to be traveling in areas near where the games are being held, or even, something like the Grand Canyon. It's not necessarily very close to one of the cities where the games are being played, but still, it's like, it's like for people that have never been to the States, that's probably one of the biggest attractions that they want to see. So, I think those areas are still going to see like a big surge in demand. Also, I think that people will travel maybe a little bit earlier than the start of the World Cup, right? So the World Cup starts on the June 11th. People might be traveling up to a week in advance. So even a week before the World Cup, you might see some increase in demand. The same applies to the end of the World Cup, right? A lot of people might, travel, still be in the States a few days or maybe up to a week after the World Cup. So I think the entire month of June and July is going to be strong months. Like regardless where you are, there's going to be estimates range from like 3 to 6 million of visitors that will coming for this event. So that in itself, no matter where the games are being held, that in itself is going to, create demand in a lot of areas, especially the touristy areas, right? So those are some things that you want to pay attention to. I highly recommend, go to FIFA.com and really familiar yourself with the schedule, especially if you have units in one of the cities that we discussed. And really start thinking about how to price, of course, but then also December 5th, right? Really make sure you put that in your calendar. And once the teams are known, I would recommend do a little bit of research on the countries that will be playing in your city. So let's say that my country, I'm from the Netherlands, right? If we play in your city, it'll be good to understand a little bit about who are Dutch people, what type of accommodation do they like, right? As a Dutch person, I can tell you that, for example, we like to use bicycles, right? So if you're in a city where we are playing, if you have 2 bikes or a couple bikes that we can use, that's a big selling point because we love going around the city by bikes. I didn't have a car until I was like 32 years old. My first car was when I moved to Chicago, and I bought a car in Chicago. I've never owned a car in the Netherlands because we use trains and we use bikes. Secondly is like, think about the colors. My country is all about orange. So if you get some orange gadgets and orange hats or things that people can take to the stadium or take to the fan zones to party, that's a huge selling point. So definitely learn a little bit about the culture of the countries that will be playing in your city and see if you can use that to your advantage in your marketing. I think people are really going to dig that because, people are crazy about soccer. Crazy. And the people that go to these soccer games, they're crazy about their countries. They'll be running around town with the flags of their countries and the colors and the shirts and all that stuff, right? So really think about like, what can you do to your unit that will make it a really attractive World Cup accommodation, and use that in your marketing. Definitely use that in your marketing because, again, people are really gonna want the best experience possible. For a lot of people, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity, and they are going to want to make the most of it. So any way that you can contribute to that experience, people are going to want to pay for that. They're going to be willing to pay for that. So if you want to learn more about how to price, like, keep following this podcast. We will be doing more episodes. Probably we'll do another episode right after the draw on December 5th, so we can give you guys some insight in, what are the biggest games, what games do we expect to attract the biggest crowds as well. We could talk a little bit about the culture of the countries that we'll be playing. So we'll definitely be doing some episodes because I think this is one of the biggest opportunities, of the decade, probably, for your short-term rental units if you're in any of these cities, right? So big opportunity. We'll be talking about it more. Also, if you want us to manage your revenue potentially, then go to freewildfoundry.com/report. We can do a free revenue audit on your portfolio and tell you where you're doing well, where you can improve, how much we think your revenue could be improved. If you're a good fit for our service, we'll walk you through how that works as well. But at the minimum, we'll give you some advice and we'll give you some insight, and we'll point you in the right direction on where to find the right support for your business. So freewildfoundry.com/report. That's it for now, guys. Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed this episode. I did enjoy it because I love talking about soccer. I'm a huge soccer fan. I might actually be traveling to the States myself to watch one of the games. If we make it to the semifinals or the finals, we've never won the World Cup. We've been in the final 3 times and we lost. Last time we were in the final was 2010. And so one of my goals for my life is for our country to win the World Cup. And if I can witness that in the stadium, that would be incredible. So with that said, appreciate you all. Thanks for listening and or watching. We're putting these podcasts on video on Free Wild Foundry YouTube channel. If you want to watch, go to Free Wild Foundry on YouTube. You'll see all the videos. I've invested a little bit into my little studio over here so that everything looks a little better than before. So go check it out, Free Wild Foundry on YouTube. Give us a thumbs up and comment on our videos, of course. And then we'll see you next Monday with another episode of Rev-Up. Thank you. Until next time.
Get paid for your pad. Get paid for your pad. Get paid for your pad.